Welcome back to another episode of Local Search Tuesdays. This week I'm sharing my slides from the recent Kain Automotive conference in Lexington, Kentucky. A few weeks back, I got to head back to Lexington for one of my favorite automotive events of the year, David Kain's Clients and Friends Workshop. It's always a killer conference, but this time he really upped the bar. The first night we got to tour the Castle and Key Bourbon Distillery, and the second afternoon we got to head out to the horse races. But also there were some amazing conference presentations, and as always, I wanted to share mine in this week's video. So here we go. It's about half an hour, and it's packed with awesome tips. So enjoy. Well, this is Spider-Man's Guide to Automotive SEO in 2022. You guys all know me because you're watching this as a recording on my weekly video series, which is Local Search Tuesdays. But for those of you that might be watching for the first time, I do have a weekly video series, and you can check it out at our site right there or follow us on any of the social platforms we're on to get links to those. But I'm lucky enough to get to speak at a lot of conferences all over the world. And, you know, sometimes I see some presenters that aren't as great to watch. They'll stand locked behind the podium, and they typically have their back kind of to the crowd because they're reading their own slides, and the background of their slide is just plain white and it's black Arial font, and each slide is packed with bullet points, and they're just reading bullet points for the entire presentation. And because of that, I firmly believe that bullet points kill kittens. So today's presentation will be entirely kitten safe. And obviously you saw the Spider-Man reference there. As always, there's a movie theme every time I do a presentation because I love to share my love of movies with my love of talking about digital marketing. So today's theme is superhero movies, and we have 112 references to superhero movies, including at least one superhero movie for every year in the last 50 years. If there's something that's older or something more obscure you haven't seen, there is attribution off to the side. So not only do you learn some awesome stuff about SEO today, you're gonna have some great movies to go watch later. So let's kick this off. Why the long face? Are you spending too much time looking up at other dealerships that rank higher in local search results? You don't have to have a huge brain to succeed at SEO. Even though it seems like SEO might be a lot of smoke and mirrors, it's not really magic. I've got a lot of hot tips that you can use yourself to get a better understanding of SEO and help your dealership show up better. In fact, you follow these tips, you'll be able to crush your competitors in local search results, and you'll be surprised at how much you'll be able to kick ass. Now, thanks to COVID and the chip shortage and the inventory delays, business has been really wacky over the last 2 years. I thought I would graph out what most dealerships' website traffic looks like since the beginning of COVID, and it kind of looked like this. It's just been a crazy last couple of years. But in today's world now, more than ever, you need SEO. A lot of dealers are stopping doing any SEO because they're saying, oh, I don't have any inventory to sell, and I'm not really worried about showing up because I'm not struggling to sell cars, and we're making a lot of money per copy, so who cares? It's not really something we need to worry about. But SEO is about so much more than just showing up for the new cars that you sell. You got to show up for used cars. You got to show up for fixed ops. It's really important to make sure that you're continuing your SEO efforts so that when we do come out of the inventory shortage, you're not going to be at a much worse position because everybody else was doing SEO when you weren't. And stop considering success based on how you rank for a handful of keywords. It's not really a good judge of success. Go watch this video. It explains more about it, but 20% of the searches that happen every day have never been searched before. So how are you going to do successful rank tracking? And rank tracking doesn't even show what customers see in the real world. And you don't do SEO to rank. You do SEO to get more traffic and more leads, so you sell more cars and do more service. And one of the biggest problems with automotive SEO is we have this OEM approved vendor system to kind of force dealers to use a certain handful of vendors. But that system is not in your dealership's best interest, because once you get into the OEM approved system, you can't really update your packages and strategies. It's very difficult to do so, which means all those providers are locked into using the same strategies they've been using for years. And Google released over 3,000 updates last year alone. So how is a strategy designed 2 or 3 years ago going to be effective today? They also have to work with any dealership that wants to sign up, which ends up in situations in bigger markets where the same SEO provider is doing SEO for 5 or 6 dealerships, and they're all paying to be the highest visible dealership in that area, but that doesn't make any sense. They're also ridiculously overloaded when it comes to how many dealers per person each team member is working with. There's some vendors out there that are in this OEM approved program that each individual person works with over 100 dealerships a month, which means you're getting maybe an hour of work a month for the money that you're spending. And they also have to offer the same packages to every single dealership, which doesn't make sense because then the same strategy and tactics are being used for every dealership. And how does it make sense that a Ford dealer in a super crowded, super dense Ford market like Dallas gets the same SEO strategies as a Ford dealer in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming? How is any of that going to help your dealership? What you really need is a customized strategy if you want to win when you're doing SEO. And because you're a dealership, you actually need local SEO, which is a more complicated subset of traditional SEO. Google's local algorithm is different because it considers additional signals that the traditional algorithm doesn't even evaluate at all. But most automotive vendors only do traditional SEO. They don't do local SEO. Now, if we're going to graph out the signals that matter between the regular algorithm and the local algorithm, there is some overlap in what's there. And it would look kind of like this. So if you're using a vendor that is only doing traditional SEO, of all the effort that they're doing, all the things they're doing, that's the yellow circle. Only the green bit, which is the overlapped bit, is the elements or the effort that's going to benefit your dealership. Whereas if you're working with a vendor that does local SEO, 100% of what they would be doing would be beneficial for the dealership. The reason we know that you need local SEO, very easy to test this yourself. Any searches related to dealerships are automatically localized. In this case here, I did a search for Ford dealer and didn't enter a location, but my office is in Plano, Texas, and you can see Plano, Texas is right there in the center of that map. And it's going to show me the Ford dealers that are closest to my location in the real world. And it shows the map pack, which is a very clear indication that that search has local intent. So what you need to do is pay attention to the annual study that's done called the Local Search Ranking Factor Study. And in that study, they take the top about 40 experts worldwide that do local search, that are doing this day in and day out and know the positive factors, negative factors, competitive factors. And they send a really extensive survey out, and then they aggregate all of the answers together to get a really good idea of the things that affect visibility in searches. So you get two pie charts. The first shows you the factors that influence your dealership's visibility in the map pack or in searches in Google Maps. And the second pie chart shows you the signals that matter for showing up in the organic listings below the map pack. Now, before we dig into these signals and explain how to optimize these various areas, it's really important to talk about last summer's page experience update. This update wasn't a penalty-based update. It was an update that revolved around what it's like to use a website on a mobile phone. So it's all about the user experience signals that got incorporated into the algorithm. So you can check out this video here where I walked through those things. But basically, like I said, it's all about what is it like to use a website on a mobile device? Is it responsive? Is it fast? Is it easily clickable, et cetera, et cetera? So that just means that the technology of your website platform makes a massive difference in your ability to show up in searches. One of the elements of this update was now Google made it very crystal clear. You need to be on a responsive website platform, and dealer.com is not on a responsive website platform. And we can see with this dealer group that we worked with that had multiple stores on multiple platforms, and they switched all over to the same platform. And because they had a Subaru dealership, they had to switch to dealer.com. You can see here, this top result was Dealer Inspire. The second result was Dealer On, and you can see the date there. This is showing from Search Console visibility data of the things they ranked for on page 1 and page 2. And you can see when they switched to a lesser technology platform, a lot of visibility went away. So let's talk about the signals that you can optimize so that you can show up better in these searches. And we'll start with on-site signals. So that's the content on your site and how it's optimized. We know that customers are going to shop around. So it's not like somebody's going to go to Google and do a search and buy from the first dealership they find. In fact, according to recent Google data, a car buyer will conduct 27 separate sessions before they submit a lead. Now, that doesn't mean they're coming to your site 27 times. It means they're going to other sites, could be Auto Trader, could be the OEM, whatever it would be, but they have 27 separate sessions on average before they submit a lead. So that means optimizing your website isn't really just about showing up in searches anymore. It's about helping you stand out and giving people a reason to come back to your site and convert at a later date. If you've got the same generic BS content as all of the competitors in the same market, why would any customer care? Why would they remember you? Why would they come back to you? So your content on your site needs to let everybody know why you're awesome. And that also means it'll let Google know why you're awesome. So make sure that your content is actually about your dealership and about the local area. Don't have the same generic boilerplate content. Update the content. Make sure it's about your dealership and why you're awesome and why people should buy from you and not from your competitors. And make sure that it's clear that you're involved in the local community and you're a great place for people to come do business. One way we like to test that content, if you were to look at your homepage content, for example, and change only two things, the name of your dealership and the name of the city you're located in, could you take that content and put it on another website for another dealership on the other side of the country that sells the same brand? If that content would still work and all you did was change your city and the name of your dealership, but it would still make sense on that other site, that means your content's not really about you and not really about the local area. So it's a really great way to test your content quickly. Another test that you should run on your content is to see if your content is conversational. Everything on your site should sound like something that you would say face-to-face to a person that just walked in the front door of the dealership. So grab another person and read it out loud to them. I'm not talking about read through it in your head and think through it in your head. I'm saying physically read the content out loud to another person. And that will help you uncover the things that your brain doesn't catch when you just read through it in your head. The marketing speak and the keywords that you think are okay when you're reading don't sound conversational when you read them out loud. So it's a great additional way to test your content. One of the things we see all the time is when somebody lands on a homepage of a dealership site, the second or third sentence will say, we also serve customers in City 1, City 2, City 3, City 4, City 5, City 6, City 7, City 8. I saw a dealership website a week ago that the second sentence on their homepage was a list of 36 cities that they serve customers in. You wouldn't greet a customer that just walked in the front door of the dealership with a list of 20 cities that you also serve customers in because they're already there. And also that list isn't going to help you show up any better for searches in those cities. So just don't do stuff like that. And that's the sort of stuff you catch when you read it out loud. An idea that you should hold in your head. If you want to show up as a search result, when somebody searches a particular phrase in Google, then you need a page on your website that's about that concept. And that page needs to be the best answer in the local area to the question that that searcher is asking. And if you're writing the page that is truly the best answer in the local area to the question they're asking, that means you're also going to think ahead and answer the subsequent questions that that potential customer might ask once they have their initial answer. That's how you write amazing, awesome content. And then once you've written this awesome content, you need to optimize that content for Google. So I'm going to walk you through the page elements that you should be optimizing on each page of your site. The first being the title tag. It's the text that shows up in the little tab above where you type in the URL. And it's typically what populates the blue link when you show up as a search result in Google. It's important to have the targeted keyword phrase and your location phrase in there as well. Now, don't ever put your dealership name first. You're the only dealership name that you'll always rank number one if somebody searches for you by your name. So don't waste valuable optimization space. If anything, if you want it in there for branding, put it at the end of the title tag instead of the beginning. Now, also, as I walk through these various page elements, remember that it's super important that it's the same keyword phrase every time and you're not mixing things up. The second most weighted element on the page is the H1 heading. That's the big headline above your text area. Could you have more than one H1 heading? Sure. Should you? Absolutely not. So definitely check with your provider, make sure that there's only one H1 heading on the page. It should be a little more conversational than the title tag, and it should have the same keyword phrase and also your city and state abbreviation. And then obviously you need it in the page content, but if you already wrote amazing text that answers the questions the searcher will ask and the subsequent questions the searcher will ask and is truly about your dealership in the local area, you're already going to have those phrases there. You won't have much to do. All the platforms allow you to set custom URLs for internal pages on the site. So always include the same keyword phrase and location phrase in the URL for the page. Great example here, out of the box, most dealership sites will have a URL for the used car page that will be something like dealership.com/search used or dealership.com/search pre-owned. both of those would be all one word. You'd be much better off with dealership.com/used-cars-dallas-tx. Always use dashes to separate your words as well. Alt text on image is another area that you can really do some great stuff. Years ago, Google couldn't tell what was in an image. So alt text is a descriptor that's in that image embed code that explains what's in the image. Well, now machine learning allows Google to tell pretty exactly what's in that image, but alt text is still part of the algorithm. And it's something that most other dealers don't do anything with. So it's a great way to outpace competitors and give yourself additional locational relevancy. Plus, you open yourself up to a lawsuit if you don't have alt text on your images, because anyone that's blind that is using a browser that is a screen reader, that browser can't tell what's in the image. So ADA compliance laws say that every website needs to have alt text on images. And if you don't, you could potentially be sued. Even though obviously the blind person can't drive the car, they can still sue you for not having a compliant website. So you want to be careful there. And the last element is the meta description. Now, the meta description is behind the scenes code, so it doesn't show on the page, but it's what populates those couple of gray sentences underneath your blue link when you show up as a search result in Google. So you want to write something compelling, approach it like it's an ad, write something there that's going to really stand out and help you get more click-throughs to the site. When you're optimizing these elements and thinking about the content that you're writing, it's really important to take your blinders off and don't use the automotive jargon that we're all familiar with, because customers don't necessarily use the same language to search for the products and services that you're selling that you use at the business. My favorite example here is dealers love to say that they sell pre-owned vehicles because it just sounds a little nicer than saying used cars. The problem is customers don't search for pre-owned vehicles. They search for used cars. So I used Google's ad preview tool to get some numbers on what the potential monthly search volume is for these two phrases. So across the entire United States on a monthly basis, on average, there are 1,900 searches a month for pre-owned vehicles and 823,000 searches a month for used cars. So do the math. You want to optimize for the way that customers are searching. How many people will you miss out on selling to if you're not showing up in the search results because you're optimizing for the wrong phrases? You also need a blog, and you need to post to that blog on a regular basis. Now, what is a regular basis? It's whatever you can sustain. But the reason you need it, there's a huge difference between the content that goes on your website and the content that goes on your blog. Website content is more bottom of the funnel content meant to get people to convert, to call, chat, or fill out a form. Blog content is more early funnel or even before funnel content where you want discovery, you want eyeballs on you, you want people to know about you so that when they are ready to shop, you're more likely to be in consideration. In fact, if you make your blog a local destination and just share helpful information about the local area that doesn't even have anything to do with your dealership, that's really valuable. And it's almost like a billboard effect. You don't put up a billboard expecting that everybody that sees the billboard will buy a car. You put it up for brand awareness. Same kind of idea with the blog content. If you share awesome information about the local area, it helps you gain more visibility and get eyeballs on the dealership site before people are looking to buy a car or to get service. In fact, for the dealers that we work with, about half of the content that we put up on the blog has nothing to do with the dealership. And it's just information about the local area. If you're not really sure how to do this because you haven't done it before, I did a video, and also there's a transcript so you can just read the blog post if you prefer not to sit through the video, where I walk through 10 different concepts that you can use as a springboard to write your own localized content. Another thing I want to be sure to share is dealers always want to try to show up in the bigger city of the metro area or in the next city that's 10 miles away or whatever that would be. Before you try to go optimize and show up in other locations, you need to own your backyard. And what that means is you need to have a solid enough SEO foundation to be dominating the local search results where you actually are located before you go try to show up in other areas, because you're going to have to out SEO competition in those towns that actually have locations there. So own your backyard first before you try to expand. Now let's move on and talk about inbound links. Those are links from other websites pointed to your dealership site, and they're an incredibly weighted ranking factor. It used to be a numbers game back in the day, but Google changed it up because obviously numbers alone aren't a good gauge of link success or link value. So now it matters that those links are relevant to your dealership site. But most automotive SEO providers, and even outside of automotive SEO, a lot of SEO providers in general don't do any link building, and dealerships for sure don't do it when they're not doing anything but their own SEO. mainly because it's very time consuming and difficult to do. Now, every time I say this, somebody will stand up and say, well, I use this one really big provider and I get links. And we say, okay, cool. What link did you get last month? And they pull up their report and say, oh, I got a directory from, or a link from xyzdirectory.com. If you can go fill out a form on some crappy directory and get a link back to your site, that link is not valuable to Google's algorithm. Google wants to see links that you earn, not links that you can just go get yourself because you fill out a form on another site. And because we're talking about the local algorithm, you really want to get links from local websites and local businesses. Now, like I said, it's really hard to do and it's very time consuming to do so. So if you're going to do this yourself, you need a dedicated staff member, not an internet manager or marketing manager that also does some SEO. You need a full-time SEO person if you're going to do this in-house. Otherwise, you're probably going to need to work with a vendor partner because it's just time consuming and difficult, and there's a lot to it. Now, the easiest way to get links is all of the old school community involvement stuff that dealerships used to do before we had the internet. So if you get involved in the local community, it is really easy to do. Luckily, most dealers are already involved in the local community and they're very philanthropic. So if you want to learn more about some concepts of things you could do for links, I did a really long 2-hour presentation at Digital Dealer in Las Vegas last fall. So you can watch the second half where I talk about the link ideas and concepts and tactics that you can use. But for now, we're trying to squeeze in as much as we can into today's presentation. So we're going to move on and talk about customer reviews. Obviously, they're important from a word of mouth standpoint and from attracting other humans, but they're also heavily weighted in Google's local algorithm. So you've got to have a really proactive, solid foundation for reputation management. You've got to have a great process in place. So what we like to do is set up a reviews page where it's a simple page on the site that has a thank you message and says, hey, thanks for doing business with us today. Let us know how we did. Leave us a review on one of the following sites. And you list multiple options. That way it's easy for people to leave a review and it's easy for you to ask everyone because it's a simple page to send them to, and they don't have to figure out where to go on Google or where to go on Facebook or where to go on DealerRater or where to go on Yelp. And here's a really cool thing about Google reviews. If a customer leaves keywords in the text of their review that you're trying to show up for, it'll actually give you a little bit of a boost and help you show up. Now, obviously doing it one time isn't going to matter, but over time, if you continually get reviews with those keywords, it's going to get you more visibility. So watch this video. It explains how to do it. Now, keep in mind, this is not in your dealership response to the review. It's what the customer writes in their review. But you can't tell people what to write because it's against Google's rules and can get you in trouble. But there's a cool Jedi mind trick that I share in that video. If you ask the right questions on that reviews page, it really helps. So as an example, instead of just saying, thanks for doing business, let us know how we did, say, hey, if you're not sure what to write, the best reviews offer details and tips. Here's some questions that might help. And then notice the first question, did it buy a new car or a used car? Boom, immediately. They're going to say that they wrote or that they bought a used car if they bought a used car. So you could ask the right questions to Jedi mind trick them into including those phrases you want them to include. Another question we get from dealers all the time is, hey, I got this review from somebody and they're not in our system. So they definitely weren't a customer. They definitely never talked to us. Can we get this review removed? Google's probably not going to remove it. It's very difficult to get Google to remove a review, and they're never going to remove it just because you say, well, this person wasn't a customer. And they're especially not going to remove the review if it's a 1-star review that doesn't have any associated text, because there's no way to know that that person was truly a customer or not. So your best bet is to leave a strategic response to let people know that that wasn't really a real review and not a real customer. So watch the video. It walks you through how to do that. But I want to make sure that we finish up talking about Google Business Profiles, the worst rebrand ever. We're going to still probably call it Google My Business for the next year or two, but the new official name, Google Business Profiles. And the reason that these are important is it's your new homepage. People don't have to go to your website to get your phone number or your address or to see pictures or to read testimonials or see frequently asked questions. They could do all that in your Google Business Profile. So it's truly the first impression you're going to make with new customers when they search for you by name. So you want to make sure you've optimized the heck out of your profile. Fill out everything that you can fill out. And when you're filling out your website link, make sure you include UTM tracking, because Google Analytics attribution is broken. And if people are doing searches on mobile devices, the mobile devices typically aren't going to pass any referral information to Google Analytics, which means a lot of the organic traffic that's coming in is being classified incorrectly in Google Analytics as direct traffic. So watch the video. It explains what to do, but basically you want to add a link or add this string to the end of your link. So that will force everything to be correctly attributed as organic traffic. And it will also now separate the traffic that comes in from clicking on regular blue links in search results and traffic that came in because they clicked on your website link on your Google Business Profile or on Google Maps. And some people in automotive will tell you that your source should be Google and you use a campaign variable, but it's better to separate that traffic out at the top level and have something other than Google as the source. And make sure that you're putting the UTM tracking on every link that you have on Google My Business or your Google Business Profile, not just the website link, because you want to be able to differentiate between those various links. Make sure you're listing a phone number with a local area code. That is a huge signal to Google's algorithm, but that doesn't mean you can't do call tracking. Just get a call tracking number that has a local area code number, and then put the call tracking number in as your primary number. So that's what humans will see. But in one of the alternate slots, you can put in your local phone number, and then people or Google's algorithm will see consistency while people see the different number. Be sure you're selecting the correct categories, because the categories that you select have a massive influence on how you show up in search results. And you want to be strategic about which category you choose as your primary category, because it carries a little bit more weight in the algorithm. If you're not sure which categories to choose, I have an awesome little handy list. You can either watch the video or, again, read the transcript of the video, and it walks through the categories you should have on your main listing related to sales, the categories you should have on your service listing related to service, and the categories you should have on your parts listing related to parts. And speaking of the different department listings, you should have one Google Business Profile for the dealership, which is your sales related Google Business Profile. Then you should have a separate one for service and a separate one for parts, and they should be nested and listed explicitly as departments of the dealership on your main listing. Watch this video. It walks you through how to do this if you haven't already set it up. And they have rolled out the cars for sale widget, which is something that allows you to display your inventory on your Google Business Profile. It's amazing. It is now rolled out to desktop, so make sure you've got that as well. Make sure you're using Google Posts. Google Posts are basically free ads that show up in search results. But again, I'm trying to squeeze in as much as I can, so I'm not going to talk too much about them. You can go to the Whiteboard Friday that I did for Moz last year. It's a 15-minute video that is densely packed with information about how to do Google Posts the right way. You should also be paying attention to the Google Business Profile questions and answers section. It's been around for a few years, and most people still don't know that it is there. It allows anybody to ask you a question, and any random person can answer it for you. And that should terrify you. Customers actually think that it's a chat or some sort of instant messaging system and that you're on the other end waiting to answer their questions. But in reality, it's just a community discussion widget. Now, the really cool thing is that you can upload your own questions. We call it setting up a pre-site FAQ page. People aren't going to go to your site to look at FAQs if they can see them right there in your Google Business Profile. So load your own common questions and then answer your questions. And the reason that's important is as somebody clicks the Ask a Question button and they start to type a question in, if a similar question has been asked and answered in the past, Google will auto-complete the question and supply an automatic answer to their question as they're still typing it, which obviously is an amazing experience for that potential customer and makes it much more likely that they're going to call your dealership. Now, last important thing, I have a scoring matrix that I use whenever I speak at 20 groups, or I use it at conferences as well. And it looks at on-site and off-site signals of basic SEO tactics. So not at a strategy level where that could be debated, but really basic tactics that pretty much everyone would agree are important tactics to be using. And it scores you on a scale of 1 to 100. If you want me to score your dealership, I am happy to do so. Obviously, you're watching the recording after the conference, so you can't come by and stop by our table, but shoot me an email at greg@searchlabdigital.com if you'd like me to score your dealership to kind of get an idea of what your SEO looks like. Happy to help you with that. If you follow all these tips and use a customized approach to local SEO, you will get amazing results. This is a Kia dealership that started with us in January of 2020, a couple of months before the COVID lockdowns, averaging about 4,400 visits a month. And while every other dealership tanked, this guy has continued to just go up and up and up. And every month this year, he's been above 60,000 visits a month to his website. And then this is a GM dealer that started with us a few months after the lockdowns in 2020, also continually trending upwards. Started at an average of 8,600 visits a month and has been consistently over 40,000 every month this year. And it's not just long-term results that the customization approach helps with. This is a Ford dealer that started with us just a year ago, and we've already doubled the website traffic to their website. So I know I went through a lot, but hopefully that proves to you that that customized approach will be better and you can get amazing results if you follow all the guidance I shared today. Thank you so much for sitting through that absolute fire hose of information. And hopefully now when you're looking at local search results, you're not going to be down and depressed because you've got all of these hot tips. I know I used it earlier, but it's a funny joke. Come on. You got all these hot tips that you can use to get better visibility in searches. So your dealership will no longer be the underdog in local searches. And in fact, everybody at the dealership will be super pumped at how amazing everything works with your SEO. So that was Spider-Man's Guide to Automotive SEO in 2022. There's my Twitter account. You can follow me on Twitter if you want to stay up to date with all the things that I'm tweeting about SEO. And there's my email address. Again, if you want to be scored, pop me an email. I will score your stores. Or if you just have questions about SEO, I'm always happy to help and I won't try to sell you stuff. I'll just answer your questions. Pop me an email anytime. Or if you'd like to get a copy of these slides, you can get a copy of the slides. And at the end, there is, as always, a list of all the movies by order of release date. So you got a great list of movies to watch. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. Thanks for sticking around to watch the whole presentation. That's definitely all the time we've got left for this week's episode. So you know what that means. Put your hand on the screen right here. We totally just high-fived because you learned something awesome. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week for another episode of Local Search Tuesdays.